Hello, hello, and welcome. Welcome to Parenting Differently, where we leave behind that old way of parenting and allow the gifts of motherhood, of parenthood to raise us. Different perhaps to how we were raised, different to how society keeps telling us to raise our kids. Maybe you're even parenting different than you expected you would be. Just different. I'm your host, Anja Simmons. I am an author. I can claim that now. I have my new book out, Parent from This Place, How Yoga Changed the Way I Parented. I'm a mum of two big people. I'm also a trained British nanny, and I came into parenting thinking it would be easy. And I was in for shock, in for surprise when it actually took me much deeper into myself, and I realized we were being raised together. So welcome. I'm grateful you are here. Please subscribe, please share, please like, all the things that you can do on social media to just get more people aware that there is a different way to parent. My guest today is Katherine Endy. She's a family life coach, coach and parenting coach. She's also a researcher, which I'm interested to dive a little more into, and a mum of three. So I'm super excited to introduce you to Katherine. And one thing I wanted to mention that I actually forgot to is that Katherine is a doctoral candidate at the University of Maryland in Baltimore. And she studies the effects of mindfulness, self-compassion, and emotion regulation on parenting stress in mums of preschoolers. So super excited to have her here to dive into that and to see how that showed up in her parenting or what she learned from that. So, welcome, Katherine. I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm so excited to talk with you.
Good, good. So, let's dive right in. Who are you and who are you mothering?
I love that question. So I'm Katherine Endy, and I am a mom of three. And I'm also a parenting educator, researcher, and coach. I'm the founder of the Family Life Coach, which is an online coaching business where I work with parents of 2 to 10-year-olds who want to parent more consciously, who want to parent differently. So, which really comes out of my own parenting journey. So I am mothering, as I said, three not so young children. My oldest is 15 and she's a girl. And my middle is also a girl. She is 12. And my son, the youngest, is about to turn 11.
Mm-hmm.
And they are each so different as children are. They're each their own unique beings. My oldest is very intense and sometimes very anxious, very smart, and really can see through the nonsense of some of the ways that we might have parented in the past. So we can kind of get into that, honestly. My middle one popped out just like easy, regulated, calm, chill, go with the flow. And really up until recently, when she's sort of in the puberty, early adolescent stage, she has just been like, she's the one who is always ready in the morning on time. She puts herself to bed. She, as a toddler, she would sometimes around 6 p.m., she would just say, "Mama, can you put me to bed now?" And I was like, actually, no, I'm still feeding dinner to the rest of this family. But she just naturally, it's just her spirit to just naturally kind of take care of things. And then my son is a little bit more similar to my oldest in personality. He's absolutely, sees through the ridiculous rules of school and life. And he just wants to play sports and watch TV and be in his body. And they're all hilarious. They make me laugh so much every day. And as they get older, they just get funnier and sillier. And it's great. Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. I love the way you just described the three of them because I love the idea that because our kids are so honest that they totally see through even at our rule. You sort of say a rule and then you go, hope that sits. And then they're like, that doesn't, and you're like, oh, damn, they caught me. I was trying to just put that in for my own sanity. And you were saying, this doesn't make sense. Wow.
Yes, actually, we just had a situation with my oldest where, there are those parenting moments where they ask you, can they do something or can they have something? And you just intuitively, it's like, it's a no, right? Like, I mean, we try to say yes as much as possible, but sometimes, can we have dessert? No. And sometimes it's just, there's no good reason. It's just like, I don't feel like serving you dessert tonight. And this happened the other night with my oldest, and she was like, I don't care about the dessert, but I just want to know why. And I was like, I just, there's no answer. Like,
I just know that we're not supposed to have it before dinner.
There's no answer. There's no logical answer. And she could not tolerate the fact that there was no logical reason for why I made that decision. And even the next day kind of picked it up again. Okay, but can you tell me the reason why? So if that gives you a sense of how I have to parent her differently, that's kind of in a nutshell, is like, she needs to know. And so, that whole, I don't know if this is how you were raised, but I feel like people of our generation sort of have this, many of us had parents who did the kind of, because I said so approach, right? Like, I said no. And the reason is because I said no, and I'm a grown up. And that just does not fly in our family, partly because that's not how we've raised them. But now that they're old enough to, with my oldest, even when she was little, that was just never an acceptable answer.
That's, I fully hear that. That's cool. So in all of this, that my next thought is, so what are you uncovering about yourself through the three of them?
Oh gosh, you just dive right into the good stuff.
I do. I want to know, Katherine. I want to know.
You just go right in. I love that. What am I discovering about myself? Well, I think that like any of us who've worked with children or worked with families for a long time, I mean, I've been working with families of young children for probably 20 years or more, early, and even, I mean, I think I started babysitting when I was 11. So
oh my God, me too.
It's so crazy, right?
11-year-old, yeah.
Babysit, but those were the back in the day.
Yeah.
So, before I had kids, I thought I knew something about kids and about raising them and about how to discipline them and what was appropriate and all of that. And, as soon as I had my daughter, I realized that anything, especially when she turned 2 and started to talk and have an opinion about things, I realized that I really didn't know anything about how to raise children, and that, and that her emotional state really has an effect on me. And that remains true because, especially with her, I think, and I think that there's, everyone sort of views this a little bit differently, but I think that there's probably some spiritual connection between us where she's got lessons to teach me, and we're here on this earth together at this time to learn from each other. And that can be really triggering, right? Like,
100%. Yeah.
So, so what have I learned from her? I've just learned the need to set boundaries really clearly and expectations really clearly. And that was something I wasn't really raised with. So it's forced me to learn how to do that and to learn how to be clear about my own, my own boundaries, like where within me, if that makes sense. Like
100%. I
feel like the boundary sort of starts within you, within us, within the individual, which is why the donut thing made sense to me, which is like, my boundary is no donuts tonight. And the reason is because that's my boundary tonight. That's it. Like, that's the reason. And so I think with her, she's really taught me how to be present with myself and check in and figure out, like, what's mine here, like what's mine emotionally here and what's yours, and establish the boundary emotionally. And sometimes that means, no, I can't listen to your big feelings right now, or I need to do these other things to prepare myself to be calm, to be regulated, to take care of myself so that I can be present for you. But right now I can't, because I'm triggered or whatever. So, I mean, I think of the three, she's certainly my biggest teacher in that regard. And, first child, like, you're new to parenting, you're figuring it all out.
Yeah.
but just in terms of her personality, and learning that, I mean, she's a kid who sometimes she really needs me and her dad, like sometimes she needs us close, but a lot of times she's a person who needs a lot of space. So a lot of the things that I know as a coach and a researcher and educator about parenting and about emotional regulation is, it's a lot about like getting close to your child and just sitting quietly with them and like allowing that co-regulation to happen.
Right.
She was 2 years old the first time she said, I need pace.
Oh.
I need space. Like, I need space. I was like, holy moly. I think I taught you to say that, but I was not expecting to hear that out of a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
So it's just her. So in terms of parenting differently, like the thing I thought was the right thing to do wasn't working for her. And I had to learn to adjust, and I'm still learning to adjust to, like, sometimes it's counterintuitive. Like sometimes the thing your child needs is not the thing you think you should do.
Yeah.
Like if she's freaking out in her room and she needs space, she needs me to walk away, even though everything in my body and my being is saying, stay close. And
Right.
So
Right. I love that, because I love the idea too that you, the teaching is coming in the place that you have to get to know you more, like you say, to be really grounded and aware of okay, this is a boundary that is not movable right now, right? And sometimes it's hard to keep explaining, right? Because the kids like the why, but it's sometimes it's just like, I don't have the capacity right now to take on more words, more emotions. And I love that you do that, because I think that really shows them and people in general that I matter, right? That you matter, and you're putting things into place to step away a moment, right? And that honoring yourself can only show them that they are valuable without the actual teaching, right? They sort of say, oh, okay, mum needed a time, step back a minute to get her thoughts. And they don't necessarily think that, but they're observing that.
Well, and and as you're saying, like that sometimes the reason for your boundary or your decision is not logical. Like sometimes, and that's it's still a valid reason. Like, because my body is telling me no donuts tonight, that's a valid reason, even if I can't logically, cognitively explain that to you in a way that like follows a certain decision-making trajectory, which is how her brain works. Like, she wants to know step by step, how did you make that decision? And so, but I think that, part of that learning is knowing that there are other ways of knowing things, right? Not all just logical.
Yeah. Now, what about, Katherine, for the times that you say, you know what, no donuts, and then they make, or we can use any example, we'll just use that for now, and they make a really good reason that actually they should have. How good are you at then, how flexible are you, or how do you repair if you've kind of been harsh on something, and then you're like, okay, well,
I think there are two questions there, right? I think there's the repair for sure. And also, okay, what if they do present you with a logical explanation? We, in our family, my husband and I, are very open to, if you can come up with a reason why we should let you do X, Y, or Z, or if you can come up with a plan, I'm trying to think of a good example, but it's like, if the thing they want to do doesn't fit in our schedule for some reason, or we can't accommodate whatever it is that they need, if they can come up with a solution and present it in a way that's calm, like sometimes they're shouting at you, right? Like sometimes they're demanding or whatever, but sometimes they will come to us and say, like, this is why I think this thing should be okay right now. And we're like, cool. Like, if they can, we almost always will say yes, if they can come up with a reason. Actually, my oldest, she recently, I know what it was. She was going to go on a trip. She went on a trip this summer with a friend. And in preparation for the trip, she spent a couple of hours creating a PowerPoint presentation to show me and my husband, basically to request to borrow money from us until she got paid from her job.
Right.
And of course, like, the hilarious thing about it is, like, she could have just asked and we would have said yes, but she came up with, like, she had a logical, like, reason why, and she had the dates, like, she knew she was going to get paid on this day, but it was after she was already on the trip. And so she had a plan for when she was going to pay us back. I mean, it was brilliant. And I was like,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Here's my
Yes.
checkbook.
Here's the money. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But to your other question about
Yeah.
making a repair, I mean, I think that is one of the key differences between parenting in what I call the new paradigm, or like the
Yeah.
new way, right, of parenting versus the way that I was parented, or the way most of us were parented, several years ago. Is really the acknowledgement that a small person is still a person, a growing person is still a person, and they deserve our respect, and they deserve to be treated the way I would treat you, the way I
Right.
would treat anyone else, right?
Yeah.
Because we're in relationship, and that is the singular point to me about parenting. And the singular challenge is that you're in your role as a mother, you're in your role as a father, and you are in relationship with this person. And each of those relationships, if you have multiple children, is different, right?
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so how do you manage the role, which is like bedtime and making meals and, setting boundaries and making rules and
When you need to
chores,
shower.
all of the things, right? Like all of those sort of functional things in your job as a parent. How do you maintain those things while nurturing your relationship with your child? Because I feel like and I say this to parents that I work with, like, what do you want that relationship to look like? Like, you're going to be in
Gosh,
relationship
you
with
are
them.
so speaking my language. If I could high five you, I would come through the computer. I'm like, yes, yes. What's the
Yes.
ultimate goal of connection? Like, what do you want to
Exactly.
have? Right?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I say to my clients, like, we're in this for the long game, right? Like, you're going to be in relationship with these people much longer when they are no longer in your immediate physical care in your home, right? Like, way past the age of 18 than you are in these first 18 years. So what are you doing now during this short period of time when they're in your care to nurture the kind of person that you want to be in relationship with when they're 25, 35, right? Like, imagine, I say to people, like, imagine you're having lunch with your 25-year-old son. Like, who's that person? And it helps them to make the shift, like, oh, so if I'm super controlling right now, then I'm not going to raise a very independent person in the long run, just as an example, right? So I think that the repair is a huge part of that, and a huge part of the new paradigm of parenting, in the sense that, like, no one ever apologized to me when I was little if they yelled at me, like, never, right?
No,
Because
no.
an adult is allowed to yell at a kid. No,
Yeah.
I am in relationship with these people, and yelling at someone or saying something unkind or overreacting is not a positive relationship building tool, right? Like, it's not
Right.
appropriate. Like, if I screamed at you, that would not be appropriate. I would owe you
Right.
an apology, right? And so that repair, and of course parents lose their cool, right? It's
Oh,
understandable.
so I was going to say, you're not talking that there's this perfect world you're in, because I don't have that in my world.
Of course. Yeah.
It's we're going to lose it
Yeah.
because we're human,
And
but
so the repair is like your super, I don't know, it's like your secret weapon in some ways to maintain the relationship, because children actually are very forgiving, and they really appreciate it when you own your behavior, right? And so if I say I yelled at my son for something later in the day, and I always say, like, this is a later kind of thing, right? Like, everybody needs to cool down. In our family, apologies, like, most of the time the victim, if you will, can't even hear the apology in the moment, and so they need time to cool down. And so at bedtime or later in the day, I'm so sorry I yelled at you, buddy. Mamas shouldn't yell at their kids. That I just lost, like, making a real apology, and that teaches them how to apologize too and take accountability, right?
yes,
So I think that that's really the secret to being able to maintain all of those details of parenting, knowing that sometimes you're going to lose your cool, but then you have this sort of back pocket resource, which is like, I can still, it doesn't make it okay to do those things, but it gives you something you can do to repair the relationship.
Yeah. So how do you, in those ones, handle that mama guilt that comes in the instant, ooh, I messed up again. I feel I'm unprepared. I even was looking for this. I knew it was coming, and I messed up. Like, how do you not repair, repair yourself? Maybe that's the way. Like, how do you handle the mama guilt that seeps in, and the shame, and the, oh my God, why did I do that again? I know better. I'm a coach. I'm a blah, 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 blah. How do you best handle that for yourself? How forgiving are you to you?
I love that question. So my research, actually, I'm a doctoral candidate in social work at the University of Maryland in Baltimore, and I study self-compassion as part of the relationship between mindfulness and mindful parenting and parenting stress. So one of the things that I'm looking at is, does self-compassion and emotion regulation, like, do those help to lower parenting stress? And what I have found is that there's a very strong relationship between just offering yourself the care and compassion that you would offer to a close friend. So, if you came to me and said, I yelled at my kid and I feel so bad about it, like, and you were kind of beating yourself up about it, I would say to you, like, you're a wonderful mother, and look at all the times that you're such a great parent to him, and all of those encouraging things, right? And it's like, we're our own worst critic. But if you can turn that around and offer yourself that same kind of self-talk, right? Say, like, I'm human, I messed up, things were super stressful today, it's understandable that I lost my cool. Like, if you can talk to yourself in that way that you would talk to a close friend, that significantly lowers that mom guilt, the parenting stress, right? And just knowing, like, you're not going to get it perfect every time. There are days when everyone is driving you crazy and you
You
lose your
don't want
cool.
to be a
That's
mom
just,
that day. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's just part of it, right?
Yeah.
It's just that's just being human. And so I think, and I also think that, I mean, I think that mom guilt is kind of glorified in a way in our culture, like, or just stress is kind of glorified. And so, like, we're kind of expected to be in this, like, negative cycle of, like, things are super stressful, and I also feel like I'm screwing it up all the time. Like, we're just kind of expected to be in that. But then what are we modeling for our kids, right? Like, I think that it's really important to model self-compassion and self-forgiveness to our children, so that they can see, like, oh, you can mess up and still be kind to yourself, right?
Yeah.
You can get a bad grade at school and not feel like the worst human in the world, right? Like, you need to offer yourself that care and compassion, because we're all just doing the best we can, right? Like, it's
But
hard.
that work is so important, Catherine, because, like, so mine are 20 and 23, about to both go up one, right? And I think, gosh, if somebody had told me when I was a young mum, I almost feel a bit teary. If someone had told me, because your words were so powerful there, that, it's, you're doing a good job, right? Or that I could quite quickly just go, okay, I'm not going to carry this. I'm not going to hold this. I messed up. It's okay. That I haven't thought of it like this for a long time. The self-compassion part towards myself, and really telling mums this is so important, because even if they wouldn't do it for themselves at that time, they will do it because they know what it will show to the children.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
And I loved what you just said about, you're doing a good job, and, like, hearing that message, right? That you're doing a good job, because that doesn't always look like a good job doesn't always look like super well-behaved children, right?
No,
And this
no.
is actually one of the reasons that I wanted to do research on parenting, is that in my work as a social worker with moms of young children, and where that kind of overlapped with research in terms of evidence-based parenting practices and things like that, right? The outcome of interest was so often the child's behavior.
Yes,
And
yes.
I just thought that was wrong, because children are going to be children, right? They're growing, they're developing, they don't have fully formed brains yet, like, all the things, right? Their emotions are messy, their behavior is messy, all of these things. So the measure of success is not whether or not your kid does what you ask them to do the first time. Absolutely not. The measure of success is how calm and regulated and kind you can be in your relationship with them. That is it, right? And so I can relate to your kind of emotion about it too. Like, I remember the first time I had to carry my daughter, as a toddler, screaming out of a restaurant because she wouldn't calm down, which is, like, every parent's worst nightmare, right?
Yeah. And you assuming everyone's looking at, oh, look at that child.
Yeah.
The mom
Yes.
is
And
messing up.
I was putting her, and I was, like, so disappointed, because we never went out,
Right.
we
Yeah,
had
it's
a
a big
toddler,
deal.
like, it
Yeah.
was a big deal to go out. It wasn't even a nice restaurant, but it was just, so I'm carrying her out to the car. She's freaking out. And another mom said to me, you're doing a good job.
Yeah. Sit with
And
that.
we need to
Yeah.
hear that, right? We need to hear that, like, even though your kid is acting loud and kicking and
Yeah.
their behavior seems inappropriate in the moment, you as the mother are doing a good job because you're staying calm, because you are
Yes.
staying present, because
Give me
you're
goosebumps.
not yelling at your child who can't help it. Like she can't,
No.
like she can't
Yeah.
help it. She's 2 years
Yeah.
old.
I really relate to that too, because I think this idea, even maybe you felt it too, coming into the world, or working as a parent coach and working with parents or talking parenting, I even had the judgment, well, what will people think if they knew what my kids were like, right? Or what if when I mess up, or they're messing up, or they're doing things that I'm like, so disapproving of. And it really, I mean, that was my switch to yoga, which I talked about a little bit when I was in yoga. And just if I can see myself in the light of love, if I can see them in the light of love, and that it's their journey, the pressure, like I wish I knew this when they were, the pressure off me, that for sure there's guidance and there's consequence. We're not talking it's just a free world, go do what you like,
Of course.
but we're talking that it's then their behavior is not a reflection of me in terms of for the good and for the bad. Well, not is a reflection, but it's also not tied into my self-esteem, which is what we've done to motherhood, right? We've done to
Yes.
motherhood that we should just know, we should just be, martyrs and giving and all of this stuff to have these wonderful children. And then people are so proud. I did a workshop a while ago, and it was so interesting. It was older parents, me and my age and up, I guess. But their whole thing was like, oh, but they're just great. My sons are this, and this son's married, and this one has a daughter, and we're so tied to these things that it's not as. Mind your
Right.
business. Let them
Right.
go be what they are. But how about how they doing? You could, there's other things.
Yes.
Do you see
Yeah,
that? Like with
I do.
motherhood, like
Yes.
I loved being a mom. I mean, I'm still a mom. I loved that, but I forgot me then, Anja,
Yes.
because then I'm so tied into, and my son sounds very similar to your daughter, firstborn. Who knows? We could all go there. You could do research on that, right?
Yes. For sure.
Yeah, that he was so, to me, brave. Like he would just talk to anybody. He would just put himself out there. He would just be, and it would make me cringe because he would then say things or do things. I'd be like, oh, the Britishness in me, like, oh, we don't necessarily say that to everybody. Tell everybody everything about our life, and then the learning of going, let him. If they are annoyed at the way, the consequence will be that he will
Yes.
start to learn that, okay, maybe not everyone wants to hear everything I have to say, right? And you can
Yes.
soften some of that, but it's that inbuilt change that really needs to happen.
Well, and I think that what you're getting at, what we're getting at is that
Mm-hmm.
it's about who they are, right? It's about
Yeah.
who they are as a person. And we can't control that. We can't,
Mm-hmm.
we can have an influence for sure, but they're all here. I mean, at the beginning of our conversation, I talked about my middle kind of coming into the world in this very
Yeah.
calm and regulated way. She was so different than my older child. I mean, I was shocked how different she felt
Yes.
as an infant, right?
Yes.
Just her energy. She's a
Yeah.
different person. She's got different goals and she's got a different agenda here on this earth, right? And so
Yeah.
my goal as a parent, and my husband and I talked about this when we found out we were pregnant with the first one, is like just singular goal of parenting is just to get to know, to always be getting to know this person, right? Like, who are you? To just always be getting to know her and getting to know as they change and develop and grow, like, who are you? And just to keep asking
Yes.
that question, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as you said, like, who they are is not about what they've achieved or what kind of job they have or how many kids they have or what kind of grades they get or any of that stuff. That's not what it's about. It's about who are you as a person,
Yeah.
right? And when and we haven't really gotten into the details of like how I've parented them in this,
Yeah. Go for it
different
though.
way
Yeah.
necessarily, but what we made a decision early on not to use punishment and consequences, not to even use rewards really after a certain point, because that can be so damaging. And we can certainly talk about that. But I think the fear is that you'll have these kind of crazy kids who do whatever they want, right? That it's a free for all. And when I started to know that it was working was when my kids would come back from playing at other kids' houses, and multiple times different parents would always say to me, your daughter is so polite, she's so respectful, she's so kind, right? And like that was like, of course we think that, right? Or we,
Sure.
but you
Yeah.
don't know what they're like out in the world, you don't know what they're like out when they're away from you.
Yeah.
And so to hear not just from one parent but from many other adults how lovely my children were, and that many other children that they would have in their home weren't necessarily like that. That to me was like, we're doing something right here.
Yeah.
And we don't have to punish them and be controlling and all of these things in order to accomplish that. And in fact, I mean, I'm blown away now. Like my kids are older now, but I've noticed recently that pretty much every night, at least one child will say, thank you for making dinner. And I'm like, I didn't train them to say that, right?
Yeah.
But that's the culture of our family, is to appreciate one another and to acknowledge, even they'll, usually it's not the person who doesn't like what's for dinner who will say,
Right. Yeah.
dinner, but
Thanks for making my worst thing I ever ate.
but even when someone in the family doesn't like what we're having, someone will say thank you for making dinner, because they hear my husband and I say that to each other, right? And they appreciate. I mean, when my daughter, I don't know, I took her to, they'll say like, thank you for taking me clothes shopping, or I mean, they just, because we have appreciation as part of our culture of our family, and because we're not being super punitive and controlling, there's this kind of reciprocity there.
Yeah, yeah, oh, definitely. And it's lovely now that mine are adults to just see them as pretty decent people, pretty, caring about the world, pretty aware that, oh, there's a piece of garbage. Why am I deciding someone else should pick? Like just in good humans,
Yes,
right?
good
And
humans.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Super. Really, really cool. Because this is what the catalyst for change is, right? And it has to start within the home if we want this world better. And it's not reaching, like you say, it's not reaching perfection. It's not meaning that people don't have tantrums and anger and mad at this or sad, or, it's really, like you say, it's that relationship building. I love the way you said that it's an ongoing, like every day is different, right? Every day I'm in a different energy level, they're in a different energy level, different, the thing from society that comes in is different, right? So it's that evolving and knowing that you got a soft place to fall, this is the place we'll catch you. Yeah, you're gonna have to figure it
Yes.
out, you're gonna work forward.
And I think that all of those external influences and all of the ever changing, internal world of your child is the very reason it's so important to take care of yourself, right? Like it's so
Yes.
important to do that self-compassion and to be constantly caring for yourself in a way that maybe you didn't have to do before you had kids. Like, right, you could
Yeah.
kind of get away with abusing your body and like, not getting enough sleep and all of these
Yeah.
things. And, maybe tolerate more negative self-talk, like all of those things. But when you are required every single day to show up and be present for another person who's really relying on you to be their anchor,
Yes.
you can't, not that there isn't room for
Oh
messing it
yeah.
up, or that's not what
Sure.
I'm saying, but you can't afford to not take care of yourself. And I resisted that idea for a long time when my oldest was little, because I was like, who has time for that? I just don't
Yeah.
understand. And what I've realized through my own parenting journey, and certainly as a coach of parents of young children, is that you have to fit it in these kind of smaller ways, right? Like it's not like, sure, if you have time for an hour of yoga, fabulous. If you
Right.
have time to lay in the bath for half an hour, fantastic. But if you don't, there are still ways,
Yes.
it's not one or the other. It's not all or
No.
nothing.
No.
There are tiny ways that you can just, I mean, before you and I started this conversation, I said, let me just go fill up my water, right? Because I know that I need to stay hydrated. And that took me 5 seconds. And drinking water takes 5 seconds. So that's,
Yeah.
and the more we can be consciously aware of how we're taking care of ourselves and working in those small things throughout the
Yeah, it's
day.
like little top ups, right? It's little top ups
Exactly.
throughout. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So that when they come home from school or whatever it is, that you can be fully present and available, and you have something in your emotional cup to give.
Yes. Yeah. I
Because
agree.
they they don't need the best version of you. They don't need 100% perfection, but they need a pretty good version of you most of the time,
Most of the time,
to be
yeah.
there. And just to circle back real quick to something, you said something earlier that sparked a thought for me, which is
Okay.
that, you know, kids see, you were talking about how other people see you, and kids see, they think you can do no wrong, right? Like
Yes.
even in
Yeah.
those moments where you screw up, and that's why the apology is so important, is that they just have like stars in their eyes about their parents, right? And so
Mhm.
even when we are being really hard on ourselves and the mom guilt is settling in, we don't realize that they've probably forgotten or let it go. And if you
Mhm.
apologize, they forgive you. Like, and so all the more reason not to be hard on yourself is like they already just think the world of you.
Yeah, you got a big fan right from the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
A
absolutely.
cheering section comes with parenting, right? Until the
Exactly.
teens,
Yeah.
then they're not so cheery, but yes.
Right, right.
It changes. The cheering changes, maybe. Okay, so Catherine, what do you think for you has been the hardest part of parenting?
Oh my gosh. Where to even begin?
Yeah, okay, top 2 points.
2 points. um, I think that early on, the hardest thing for me was recognizing that I could no longer do it all. So some of the tasks I had to let go of,
Hmm.
and that learning how to manage my own emotional state was absolutely the hardest part. And yet
Hmm.
I have the most rewarding at the same time, right? And
Right.
I was saying to someone recently, I don't know exactly precisely how I went from yelling at my children when they were really small to literally never like yelling at, like I just don't yell at them
Hmm.
anymore. And partly
Hmm.
they're older, but also I went through a process of recognizing that my emotional state matters and recognizing that I had to kind of get some of the stress under control and like all this. But again, I can't point to, like I can think of a
Yeah.
half a dozen things or more, a dozen things that I've done, small things and bigger things like therapy and coaching and things like that. But I can't say like, oh, it was meditation that solved it all. It
Yes.
wasn't
Yeah.
one thing.
Hmm.
But I would say, managing my emotional state and being able to show up for them
Yeah.
without that icky kind of
Yeah.
toxic
Yeah.
garbage inside. I think that's probably been the hardest thing, but the most rewarding for sure.
Right, the flip side. Yeah, yeah. And then the very last question I like to ask, if you think back to, I think your daughter's 15, you said, like 15 years ago, holding your first little one. What advice do you think you would give them now, based on where you're at now, based on what you know?
Hmm. What advice would I give parents, or what
Give
advice?
yourself. So what
Oh,
do you wish you
myself. Oh
knew?
gosh. Yes. Oh my goodness. I think like everything is going to be okay, and you don't have to
Mm,
take it so seriously. I see so many parents in groups online and things like that worrying about like, should I buy this kind of diapers or that kind of diapers? And should I buy this kind of food for them or that kind of food? And should they be in this activity, or is it too many? All of the things that we worry about. And when I
mm,
see it now from kind of the other side of that early parenting,
right.
I'm like, I just want to say like, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have one stroller or five strollers. You don't need all the stroller, you don't need all of the bassinets and
Yeah.
all the things. Like you just need to show up for yourself and show up for them. And that's all, I think I think my advice would be like, just don't worry so much.
I
It's
love that.
all fine. Just hold it lightly.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. Hold it lightly. I like that. I like that. Well, thank you so much, Catherine. So much wisdom in this. It's been a real pleasure, like chatting with you. And for our listeners and our viewers, there will be many ways that you can contact Catherine. I'll have all the links attached to these episodes so that you can seek her out and her wisdom. And yeah, thanks so much, Catherine, for being here.
So great to talk with you.